All right, well, nice to be here. I'm very glad to be here. I'll start with a little bit about me. I am Jennifer Agnes, and I'm, like I said, happy to be here to talk to you today. I'm a recovering Chief Data Officer, like maybe some of you. Happy to share my experiences and my knowledge about data management today. As you see, 25 plus years, then I stopped counting. From working at some well-known logos that you might recognize up there, GE Capital, where I spent a bulk of my career doing risk management, which is where I found out that data was very important to making decisions. And then after about 20 years there, I ended up running their enterprise data operations and warehousing for investor reporting and internal and external reporting, regulatory reporting. I spent some time at Credit Suisse for a couple of years. I was the Chief Data Officer for the Risk and Finance function, which, if any of you are in Risk and Finance, getting those two teams to talk and agree on definitions and how to use the data was quite a challenge. But that was the mission at Credit Suisse. And then I was really fortunate to have the first Group Chief Data Officer role at Schneider Electric, which is a French energy management company, global, and I basically was able to work in France, work in the US, and establish their first data strategy for the company. So I've led teams around the world, mostly from the US and from France, and really have spent probably about a third of my career working in Europe. And I'm here working now for an English company, so that's why I'm at Big Data London. In 2020, I made this career change and left large corporate world to come and actually focus on things that I'm passionate about, which is helping people and teams get really good with the data they manage and they control. And so now I'm the US Managing Director for the Cynozure Group, a data and analytics strategy consultancy. So with that in mind, let me just get my mouse working here. With that in mind, and as a backdrop, I have seen a lot of data things go on, data problems, data solutions, etc. And like many of you probably tried to start to convince people that weren't so data savvy about how data management can actually start to help solve some of your business problems. So, data management helps large and small companies the same. You just have to have a very strong focus and a real mission to solve some business problems to make that happen. But the more I do this, the more I'm basically absolutely convinced that data management isn't solely a data problem. It's actually more about the people and the behaviors of the people that you have to convince to make them actually be successful implementing the data strategies that you want to implement. So before I jump further, let me tell you a little bit about Cynozure. We're a people-powered data and analytics strategy company, and our mission is to contribute to a better future for all for the open and positive use of data. We do this through 4 service areas. We advise, we build and design, we maximize, and we grow. And the advisory area is really focused on helping leaders get the most, or plan their future with respect to data and create their vision and deliver that through our experts and our experience with our data strategists that we have. We design and build solutions to solve business problems using some cutting edge and leading edge technologies, but always accompanied by a strategy. We maximize, which means we help people work better and work differently, not the org structure so much, but more about ways of working so that you get the right people in the right place at the right time to deliver a product or a solution. And then we help individuals grow through coaching and executive coaching, data leadership coaching. Those are sort of the 4 pillars that we work through. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with the mouse here. Let's find that again. All right, so let's get started. I want a show of hands. This is an interactive discussion. I feel better if they're interactive. How many of us have been on the receiving end of someone's frustration about a data problem? Maybe a customer's problem, a manager's problem, the senior leadership. Wow, that was quick. Okay, good. Here's another scenario. How about whose data is right when you get to the quarterly business review? Anybody have that challenge? Oh no, I got it from finance. Well, I got it from risk. I got it from the business unit. They know best, right? Or how many of you use the Band-Aid approach, which is to solve these problems by, I don't know, hard coding, taking that little white box in your PowerPoint and putting it over a number and then typing the number you really want to show up on that? Anybody? Come on. I still do that. That being said, that is not a long-term, holistic, sustainable solution band-aids, although we will keep doing that for sure, right? But if you raised your hand, and if you raised your hand, I think almost everybody in the room raised their hand for something here. If you did, that actually means you are a data therapist. And a data therapist is an encouraging, supportive, patient individual whose expert guidance changes the lives of those who interact, use, and need data for the better. Does that feel good? Makes you feel good, right? Right. Except when it gets a little tough and a little challenging and you feel like you can't always solve the problems they want you to solve. But it does sound a lot like anybody in data's role, right? If you're a data analyst, if you're the chief data officer, if you're the governance leader, no matter what role you take, basically you are listening to people's problems and trying to solve them. So you really are a data therapist, and you kind of actually now have to embrace your inner data therapist when you go back to your office, right? This is something that you got to think about. You're actually actively helping people get through this process and this problem they're trying to solve. There are two very important parts to being a therapist. One I just mentioned, listening, right? We have to listen. One is actually doing something with what you heard, right? Those are the listen and act, and try to solve these problems. So what you're listening for really is, what are the things that bother them when you're having these conversations with a business, in a business team, not necessarily your data team, but in a business context. What's keeping them up at night? What do they see as derailers to their growth or their progress? And as you listen sort of intently to these struggles that these guys are having, you as the expert begin to start to see these patterns or these commonalities across these problems across the organization. And you have a unique position because you're listening to a bunch of different functions and people. So you can start to connect those dots by listening intently to what those problems are and seeing if in there the root cause is actually something to do with data or a data problem or a solution you haven't come up with, right? Usually it is. Maybe you don't have a holistic program to solve it yet, but there is a foundational piece that usually the root cause is rooted in something going on with your poor data management, let's say. And the second piece, and this is where you're pretty lucky, I think, is you're hearing stories and making meaningful conversations about these problems that the business is having. And it's a really great hook to get people to tell those stories versus going in and talking about, and if you were here yesterday, data governance and using the G word. It's much more about solving business problems and helping people see that you can help them do that, with some techniques and skills that you get by being good at data management. And we'll go through what that really means. Before I dig into a few examples on how to solve them, I just want to establish a common ground among us about why business problems that your clients tell you about, and I'm not talking about the data problems they tell you about, but the business problems are telling you about are the most important. So the business problems you might hear about from your clients, let's call them clients, are likely to be impacting one or more of three basic business objectives, right? Drive growth, increased revenue, income, and customer satisfaction, optimizing costs via increased efficiency and productivity, maybe reducing waste, and managing risk, of course. I come from risk. I always think about risk according to your stated risk appetite. So as a data person, when you're in a business discussion about a customer complaint regarding unfulfilled orders or repeated billing issues or delivery problems, that's exactly when you go, oh, sounds like a data therapy opportunity. Let me turn that on and start thinking about that. And sometimes it's a hard position to be in because you're maybe the data leader and they're talking about your data and you kind of get protective of your team or your people and you want to defend or explain away or give an excuse. But that's when you sort of have to zip it and just say, let me listen and hear and really hear if I can help solve a business problem, right? I find that a challenge. You can commiserate them, but that is where the gold is, right? That is the story that you start to pick up and you start to tell. And as you collect these business problems and turn them into stories, you begin to show them and get them maybe to speak about how you can start helping them solve the business problems, not just the data team has to solve it. They become engaged in part of the storyline. So recognize and knowing when to put on your data therapy persona is very important. So I'm going to let you practice for 40 seconds with me. Remember COVID testing? Everyone remembers COVID testing? In the States, where I currently live, it was a hot mess last Christmas and Thanksgiving trying to get testing and the results, right? And not to get too personal, but I have kids that live in different parts of the world. One needed 72-hour testing, one needed 24-hour testing. Suffice it to say, the results didn't come in when they were supposed to, and I had to go and pay $300 for a 2-hour test result and drive 40 minutes to get it so that I could get the test result so she could get on her plane and get back to where $300. Okay, that's my rant. Did you listen? How was that for therapy? That's what you have to hear. Do you hear anything in there that has to do with data? Anything? You know what happened? They fat-fingered the birthday and the email address. And because they had to match the email address to the birthday in the thing, we never got the results. And I ended up having to pay, with no recourse, $300 extra for no good reason. Of course, my daughter didn't want to stay home. She wanted to go back, of course. That's what your kids want to do, right? Go back to their day lives. But thank you for that. So this brings me to the conversation really about data management and what is data management. So I'll give you a definition. You can use it. There's a lot of definitions. This is very simple. Try to keep it simple. It's helpful to keep it simple if you're in an elevator. But it's the practice of collecting, keeping, and using data securely, efficiently, cost-effectively through 7 core capabilities. They include data governance foundations. We talked a lot about that yesterday. Data process and operations, which is the heart. Best data sources. Data quality management, data tooling and technology, data risk management, and data ethics and use. So we'll dig deeper into each of these right now. You can have a little bit more words, and we can have conversations in the hall or wherever you want to afterwards. I'm going to try to go through this. I think of this as sort of the data management sandwich, if you will, the top piece of bread, data governance foundations. This is all about policies and standards, decision processes, ownership, definitions, and making sure what you're working on actually aligns to the business objectives. The bottom part of the sandwich is all of the tooling and technology needed to enable the implementation of your data management strategy. It includes things like a full data platform, master data management if that's something you need, data quality profiling tools, analytics tools, whatever your choice is. But that really helps to support your entire data management sandwich, if you will. So in the middle, and well, maybe it's because I'm American. I do love sandwiches. We make really good sandwiches in America. So in the middle is the meaty, juicy part, right? And this is where the content is and the expertise starts to get really real. Data processes and operations. This is actually the data lifecycle management, ensuring that data moves across your enterprise in a controlled and curated manner, which actually improves trust across that data supply chain. So think in this thing, this is like I'm saying the heart of it. Think of this as things like ingestion, storage, consumption, disposal, all parts of that life cycle. Think of it as the capabilities around metadata management and how to actually operate metadata management tools. Think of it as, lineage and architecture. Think of it as SLAs, service level agreements that you actually have to agree across the business to make sure people understand when they're getting data, how they're getting data, how often, what's the date, what's the time. That's the heart of the operation. The next piece of work, or the next capability, is best data sources, where you provide high quality, reusable assets at zero marginal cost. Here you'd identify your critical data entities, such as customer and product and reference data, to ensure their reusability, and so that teams can reuse it, a curated data set, and eliminate what we talked about earlier, the whose data is right conversation. Now you know that's the right data set, go pick it up for that use, and it's very clear. Data quality management is really ensuring accountability for data quality resolution. And think here about root cause analysis, prioritization for remediation, and really think about accountability, because if you don't have somebody who signs up to be accountable for that problem through its ownership process, then you really aren't going to get anybody standing behind you or giving you money to solve some of these problems that have come up through the data discussions you've been having. Data risk management, this is a framework to collect, assess, and manage and control data risks, of course in collaboration with security and technology and with the compliance teams. Think about this in the context if you have a stated risk appetite and what you will and will not do and what the boundaries are of that. And finally, in data ethics and use, the point here is to create clear boundaries and measure the actions about data use and use cases in your business so that you can promote a data-safe innovation and culture. So that's a super quick walkthrough through a very meaty sandwich with lots to uncover and discuss, as I said, and we can talk about that at at your leisure if you'd like to later on. But establishing excellence in these data management capabilities will help you solve the business and operational problems that we talked about that impact your bottom line that we mentioned earlier. So I thought we'd take a look at some real examples quickly. I think we still have some time. First one. The customer complained that they received the wrong quantity of parts they ordered. Could be big ones, could be small ones. But in this case, it's not Amazon, it's not pencils. It was an order of large components from a manufacturer which were critical to the safe operations of equipment at a manufacturing site. For simplicity, let's just say they ordered 50 units, but they got 50 crates, right? You can apply that to almost any example, but that is a real example. And because the basis behind that was the front office didn't have the same quantities and measures and weights and counts as the logistics and delivery team did when they packaged it up and shipped it out. So this problem impacted at least 2 of our 3 agreed upon main business objectives, revenue and costs. The poor customer experience led them to buying parts from another manufacturer, of course impacting our revenue, and having to receive parts in return meant that they had to incur restocking fees and inventory carry costs, which could have obviously been avoided. So let's consider the potential root causes. We think about, and they're probably significant, because if it happens once, this thing, it probably happens more than once, and it'll probably happen again unless you start addressing it, right? So there seems to be a disconnect between how the front office and the sales teams sell parts and how logistics prepares them for packaging and delivery. That means there's no consistent agreement about the quantity, the size, the packaging, the standards, the weights, which which data set to actually use for the sales process versus the logistics process. So this is a breakdown. Let me just tab one more time here if I can make it work. This is really a breakdown from a data governance perspective, and impacts the entire data supply chain. So how can you start to shape this? Basically going step by step through these 7 capabilities that I just mentioned, there should be clear ownership with the critical data set so that everyone knows what data to use and when. It should be available across the enterprise through controlled data processes with service level agreements. The data set should be tagged as an authoritative source, or the best data source, if you will, for that particular purpose, and be clearly labeled and identified in a data catalog so that the right data sets can be used or transformed even to meet the needs of the downstream. And in this case, it was logistics. They couldn't meet the needs. They didn't know how to transform the data and use the data correctly. And it should have data quality controls in place to match, order to ship. None of that was in place. And of course, the technology helps all of this. It's information that should be available to the right user with the right access at the right time, with the right level of data integrity in order to continue to create a trusted data supply chain and be able to ship your parts. That's just one example, and there's a lot of examples like that. I have one more in financial services I'll mention. In this example, the finance team began to see some creep in the days sales outstandings, a KPI we use to measure cash flow, right, and collections. This type of problem, again, impacted at least 2 of our core business objectives, revenue and costs. It created a timing issue from the cash flow perspective and extra process steps and costs to reissue and collect receivables. And what was the root cause? The culprit here was the breakdown in the front office data completeness and the data flows and the data quality controls that are in place. So what they did was they basically were passing blanks. It was an IT program that started. They didn't create a data stream, so they didn't have data leadership. And basically, they were passing blanks through and didn't train the ops team that they had to enter the billing address, and so the invoices never got to where they needed to go, and they saw that spike through measuring the DSO, and that was at least they had a warning flag and were able to see what that spike was for, but then they had to go back and figure out that the ops team wasn't trained, to retrain them, and then, how many addresses are in our systems? What are they called? How many different ones are there? So the whole thing kind of got jumbled up and really broke the data supply chain and had a major impact on cash flow and how the business was operating. So there are loads of examples, like I said, right? We can go through each of these again. Again, definitions weren't clear. I think the fundamental thing is, and on the projects I've been on, fighting your way to get a seat at the table to talk about data by design, not as an afterthought. I know we have legacy things that we always have to fix, but as much as you can, get in front and be able to push your way to tell people that, designing for data is very important so that you don't start to create these back-end business problems that need to be solved. So yeah, like I said, lots of problems. One thing I do want to mention, in places I've worked, people talk about data management, data governance, data culture. This is not theory, right? I've had people say, that's just theory, a culture, it's soft, blah, 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 blah. It's not theory. Investing in data management and data management techniques and solution actually changes the efficiency and the viability of your company's operations. So that's really the message you've got to take home and tell the advocates that will help advocate for you on what you're trying to build. So take a quick second here about data management in the context of an overall data strategy, which is really important. Data management is just one of 6 pillars that we use basically to describe how to operate, right? So data management, we went through that, but you can pick any analogy, gardening, professional tennis, whatever you want. You actually need to work through a whole series of activities, like what do you want to become? What's your vision? Do you want to grow tomatoes? Do you want to get a trophy? Like, that's your vision. You have to talk about what confirming skills you need in order to get that and fill those gaps in order to be able to grow a garden or play tennis. You have to figure out the best way to get there and who has to help you. So you need a team and an operating model around you. You then have to find how to accelerate it, because you don't want to stay not knowing stuff for a long time. You want to accelerate your trajectory into this area, and then you actually need a detailed approach on how to get there. So in our 5-pillar strategy, we talk about a clear vision that frames what value data will deliver and how it'll be used to support your business strategy. We talk about a focus on people and culture, which really starts to identify those gaps and how to fill them, what capabilities you're missing. We talk about an efficient operating model, which basically improves the way of working. I said before, an organizational chart is one thing, but breaking down the silos and working differently really change the speed and scale at which you can get things done. You need a technology strategy and a solution architecture to support the consolidation and management of use of data. And finally, a roadmap, which lays out in a sequence with costs what steps you need to take and what's right in order for you to grow and scale at the pace your company can afford and you'd like to grow. So I won't read all this, because I think we're probably just about out of time, and maybe we want to have a little bit of time for questions. But good data management actually solves your operational problems. I hope those examples got you to see that and lets you achieve your business objectives. And each of these is more, the conversation here is about eliminating silos, but those silos get eliminated by good data governance, like making people own the data and understand what the sources of data are and making sure people understand that. Enabling better and faster decisions, creating common definitions, improving data quality, and ensuring safety and compliance with data privacy laws, as well as building an ethical culture of data. Thank you. So here, my call to action before they cut the mic. Break out your inner data therapist. Get the courage. Go talk to people you don't talk to very much. Don't talk to just people you're in your little bubble. Go talk to the customer service people. Go talk to the finance teams. Go talk to the risk people. Go talk to the sales guys. What troubles are they having? Listen intently and see if you can start to connect the dots across the enterprise and really start to help them solve and have them help you solve those problems. Because if, having done this for many, many years, as I mentioned, me advocating for data excellence is really great. But having somebody who's not in the data shoes advocating for that, like a sales guy or a risk guy, sort of, it really sort of pushes the envelope and gets more and more people to lift it. If anybody's a sales guy in here, they like to talk, they like to sell things. That's your best bet, is go find a sales guy, listen to their stories, and have them multiply your story and your and what you want to get done. So, yeah, educate your enterprise. Embrace your inner data therapist, and that will really help you facilitate the execution of your data management strategy. It'll help you be successful, and I do hope they'll thank you for doing that at some point, because sometimes it's thankless, but stick with it. We have some time for questions. Sam, do we have time for questions? Here, Roberto. Yeah? Let me see if I can get this to work. Do we have any questions? This one up here. I should be able to hear you in here. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Sam, it's not. Go ahead, try again.
Quick question. Can you hear? Okay. So quick question is, what has been your biggest challenge implementing data management or selling the idea of data management to business stakeholders?
Everybody heard that, right? Because your mic's, yeah. So I would say my biggest challenge is sort of what I've just described, is getting people to follow along. And I learned the hard way, because I used to be out there saying, you know, data governance, we got to make a definition, let's get together and talk about it, and not connecting it to the business case, right? And the business case is really what people start to listen to, because I've been doing this I didn't know I was a data person. Like 20 years ago, I did not know I was a data person. And I would go in and talk to somebody about a report I had, my manager actually, a great guy who's still a mentor of mine, and I could tell he couldn't even tolerate me talking about it, because he'd pick up his BlackBerry back then, that's how long, and he'd start doing this, and I'm like, I guess there's some message I'm not getting across. Those were my little signals that I look for, is when people gloss over or look the other way or look at their phone, there's something not connecting. So you got to find almost a personalized hook to get people to really care. And I call it like a grassroots effort, because you got to go person to person and strategize on the language you use, on how fast you talk, how slowly you talk. Like, some people don't, you know, everybody's different, which is the beauty of it. And if you could get everybody going in the right direction, that'd be amazing. But it takes a lot of time to do that. So patience, I would also say, is one of the things you have to have, and persistence. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, here. One more, Sam.
Can you hear me? So you mentioned about being a data therapist and going out into the business and talking to people about their problems and listening. Obviously, these could become your use cases that you then aim to go and tackle and achieve. How do you determine which are the ones that you should go after, and which is just noise, and which are the best ones to go and tackle?
That's a great question, because and it's one of the biggest challenges I think most companies have, is that prioritization plan, which is why the governance, setting up the governance aspect, who's making decisions and what are the criteria you're going to be using to make those decisions, are important. That's not an easy thing to do either. You can, there's frameworks out there that you can use. I'm going to see if it's going to hit if it's going to impact my regulatory risk. Is it going to cost me money? Is it over a certain threshold? And you can sort of put together, an assessment of 5 or 6 different things you want to test for, and if it meets or goes over the threshold, what we used to do is bring it to the council about customer, or about loans, whatever we were doing, what products we were selling. We'd bring it to that conversation and see if it was a big enough impact to get the biggest MD to support it, because then you get them to go behind it, right? And it does take a while to get that agreed upon model by which you're going to prioritize all these things. And yes, you're going to get a lot of complaints that are just nice to have, but those are your friends in the future. So, just listen, deep breath, keep going. I'll say, if you want to talk more about this stuff, you can find me on LinkedIn, of course. You can come to our booth. We're Cynozure. We're kind of in the middle. Purple's our favorite color. It happens to be my favorite color as well. So come chat with us, or find us on Cynozure.com. We have in our stand, I don't think I have it here, but we can get you that, is a QR code if you want to do a data strategy scorecard, just to test where you stand overall. You can either follow me over there, and or I can hook you up to get that at any point in time. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that was helpful. Thanks.